that have enacted some form of UAS laws. Again, they vary. It just says, do you have any kind of UAS law? That was as of 2014. As of last year, 2013, 43 states had introduced, not passed necessarily, but introduced UAS bills. 13 states had actually enacted them. Again, you go to the ncsl.org, great website to look at. 2013, you can see the states that had introduced legislation, states that had enacted legislation, and then states that had adopted UAS legislation. So again, a lot of the folks across the country, a lot of states are starting to look at it and try to do something with it. As of this year, 35 states have considered UAS bills. 5 states have enacted new laws. And then again, here's the map as of 2014 showing pending UAS legislation. So a lot of the country is doing it. I don't know if y'all are following that necessarily, or if you're just looking primarily at North Carolina. I have not looked at the other states to see what they're doing yet, but we'll eventually start looking at some of the contiguous states around North Carolina if you're interested in it. Obviously, FAA stuff is, I'd like to say changes every day, but I don't know that it really does. But we're getting some information from them. Currently writing guidelines, a number of cases obviously in the federal courts. I don't know if you keep up with those, but those to me are fascinating. Some of them are contesting whether or not the FAA really truly has the legal authorization to control the use of UAS systems, which is really fascinating because if you look at the law, I think they've got a great argument as to what that the FAA really does not have authorization to control what they're trying to control. No case has been successful yet with that, but there have been a lot of folks that are taking a whack at it, see if they can.
Why is that? Is that because of the division of the way the airspace is broken up?
Yes, and the way it's been defined in the past.
Although, okay, that goes back to the legislation in the 30s, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Before they ever thought about this.
So this is all coming down to Class G airspace near the ground being,
Yeah.
being anything goes.
Yeah. So everybody's trying to play nice, I think, right now, trying to figure it out. Just for publication. So that's what we're doing. So what's the difference between commercial and hobby? I can't tell you how many phone calls or questions I've got. Hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Well, it depends on what your purpose is. As proposed by the FAA Modernization Act of 2012, it's strictly for, if you can fly strictly for hobby recreational purposes. Operated in accordance with community-based safety and guidelines. Limited to not more than 55 pounds. Does not interfere with manned aircraft, not within 5 miles of an airport, flown within visual line of sight of operator. That's the one that's getting everybody right now, the visual line.
5 miles of an airport is pretty restricted as well.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, you
That's
can
depending on how
fly
you
if you
define
get
it.
permission.
Right.
If you
This
contact
is
the
without
airport.
permission, but I've gotten, and you had a question, I don't know if you want to ask it now, but it was a good question. Do you want to do it now? or-
Yeah, I was asking, if you were to use it for like, almost like an air show, or use it at like a concert for like visual, aerial displays and things like that.
So
If there's any
let's just say
regulation around that.
you want to use it at a concert for something for fun. They put it up on the big screen or something like that. Well, the question is, are you getting paid for it? Is somebody getting paid to do it? Let's assume no. That no, I'm just going to do this for fun. We're going to do this for just for entertainment purposes only. No, there's no payment. Then you probably can do it. If there's any compensation, anything around it,
So if you had
I
ticket
think
sales
it's
to a
gonna-
concert or a music
but
event.
the person who's doing the video and the person who's doing the flying is not getting compensated.
Then it would be okay.
Well,
Except for the
think
fact
so.
it's pretty expensive for them to do that.
Yeah,
and
it
invest all
is.
that time.
Not by the proposed FAA
that's not law yet.
rules.
Okay,
This
so-
isn't law
And
yet.
nor is
Right
this
now,
law
you
yet
get away
either.
with
Oh, some of it is. What were you saying, Paul? Hold on.
If you're inside a building that you own, is it?
I think you're
is
fine.
not apply?
I think you're fine, yeah.
Okay.
As long as you don't have to, and again, the stuff we've looked at so far is proposed. It's not even, it passed one chamber at the legislature. The governor has not signed it. Probably has a this is probably, I'm hoping that maybe 80% of this, 85 to 90 will stick, because a lot of it is logical, and it seems to make sense. There's some of it we might be able to tweak and maybe make a little bit better, but as long as you're not violating any of those provisions, if this passes, then you'll be fine, even within your building. If you've got technology that would violate it out, going through the walls, then yeah, you might have a problem.
I
But
think
probably not
the
make it.
current FAA rule, the old one, is
Right.
3 miles from the airport.
3 miles.
And that's gotta be from like a real state
Yeah.
airport, not like not any airstrip.
I've got
This would say any.
I've got a friend and client who
Hard time finding a place.
is interested in using UAS for commercial purposes, and they are going to be in the industry doing a big part of that industry. I'm being vague, intentional. And they said, can we show people what this is about? Can we take them somewhere and show it? And I don't know that they can right now. I think they've got to be very careful where they go demo these things. Because it's for, their purpose is commercial purposes right now. For friend, hey, look, I'm gonna go do this, because I've got permission to go to a farm and just have fun flying these things around. That's one thing. But what they're thinking about doing was, it's a big dog and pony to get people to buy certain products. And that's probably gonna violate the law, because it's probably, again, there is no current law in North Carolina that deals with this yet, because it hasn't passed. But if it does pass, they'd probably be in violation of it, because it'd be commercial purposes.
Can you be in violation of the law that hasn't passed?
No, cannot.
The FAA is.
Great question.
The FAA has actually been suing realtors who use it.
Yeah, the FAA has been a little bit aggressive on some, but you know what, I mean, obviously there are a lot more violations than there are lawsuits from
Well,
the
they're-
FAA.
They're also in
They're
court
picking-
with
Right.
people that like fly into New York and fly
Yeah.
outside
I mean,
buildings
obviously,
and crash in New York.
You go to Fuquay and it's a lot different than being in New York. No, I mean, there's just a difference in number of people. People can say, I don't know if you saw this story that was just published, I think it was either in June or July, I can't remember which. A U.S. senator that sits on the panel that controls, that is responsible for the FAA regulations in doing this, got married, hired a photographer, and guess what they did? They had a drone, took a video from the top of all the people out having, I don't know what part of it, but they were coming out of the church. And they, of course, tried they're going to investigate. FAA said, we're going to investigate him. Really, how that's going to work out. And they weren't sure if he was trying to make a point or if he just intentionally said, heck with it, I'm going to do it anyway. But he obviously he didn't do it. He hired a photographer that did it.
They got paid.
And then this was in the last 60 days. So interesting. There was a question or comment?
Regarding the comment of basically taking people out and showing them off the unmanned thing.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't occur to you mentioned that, but let's say I'm a single person making a hobby, making a couple of UAVs and selling them on the internet. I videotaped it on my yard, flying my property, posted to YouTube, this is what I got, come order it. It becomes illegal all of a sudden, basically, flying on my own property, showing them something I built to sell, even though I'm only selling a couple of them. It's not a commercial purpose, because it's a commercial for me.
According to the FAA, it's commercial.
Yeah.
So that means all these videos, all these products you're selling anywhere in the United States, any UAV, you can buy the UAV, but you can't take a picture of it being shown because it's sitting on the desk.
I know.
You can't fly it.
FAA, you were actually in violation of the FAA guidelines when you tested it, because you were testing a commercial product. Before you took the video, before you shared the video, if you're test driving your commercial, developing a for sale product.
I'm not sure, I don't think, I wouldn't, I don't read it that way.
Yeah, well,
It's commercial.
the proposed one would, I would read it that way.
Purposes.
Proposed, but I mean,
Yeah,
Current.
the difference is,
Yeah, the proposed regulations
Right.
that they're saying that some of the drone manufacturers are concerned because they've been told that if they're test flying products under development, that they're doing commercial
right,
flights.
under the proposed, okay, all right, I'm
What's
sorry.
how come they're like, why is it legal to do something commercial with it? What's the mentality of that right now?
You know, that's a great question, because here, let's stop it, and the question is, why is there a problem with commercial? Because as a hobby, you can go out and do basically anything you want to do, for the most part, I mean, to some extent, but because you're going to do commercial,
There's been a split between private and commercial, pilot's licenses.
Right.
As well.
but stop and think about it. I could get my 8-year-old for hobby, take him downtown on property that I own and let him go at it. That doesn't make any sense. Versus one of you guys who are knowledgeable, thinking, you know what I mean, and you're trying to make it right.
In my opinion, the reason is, if they didn't prosecute commercial use right now, before they've taken the time to write the commercial use document, there would be 100,000 people out there right now using them commercially.
So you hit it at the source. Yeah. And that may be, unfortunately, I haven't seen that argued yet from the FAA standpoint. They may be their position, and that's a good position.
From the FCC perspective, it's like ham radio.
Yeah.
That it's a public resource that you're using and you can use freely as long as you're not trying to use a public resource in a commercial aspect.
Well, there's a lot of laws that are written so that if somebody's hurt or property's damaged, there's law that says who's at fault.
Right. And then that really great segue sort of gets us into what I wanted to make sure you think about as well. And this may or may not apply to every one of them to you, but areas for consideration. Certainly liability for damage and usage is going to be, that's going to be prevalent. It's going to happen. Some people are going to do dumb things. Some people are going to make, it's going to be accidents. It's just going to happen, you know. So that's going to be an area. Insurance protection, obviously, is another one. I've talked to some agents already to find out what they're doing, and it's just now getting on their radar. I'm sure the insurance companies have already started researching it, and they're working on it, but it is so far off their radar, it's not even breaking the water hardly into the public sector yet. But it's not far off. So that's something we're going to look at, and you're going to look at your policy. You're going to do that very carefully. I'm trying to get some language now from one of the carriers. They won't let it out yet because they don't want to put out something they don't know what the law is going to cover them for. But that's going to be a very key area for you. If you use it, if you're certainly using it for commercial purposes, you need to look at your policy and make sure you know what it covers. For commercial uses, obviously contract for usage, contract's going to be very key. If you're going to be using something for commercial purposes, you're selling them, what's your contract say? What liability do you have? What warranties are you making? So things like that you want to think about. What's the liability? How far down will they go? I'll never forget, I hadn't been practicing all that long, and there was a car accident on, I think, 64 East. A car hit a bridge abutment. And I don't remember if there was a death or not, but it was a really bad accident. Well, the people that had the accident, there's like 2 or 3 cars involved, but they wound up suing the architect. Yeah.
Excuse me.
I know, that's what I did. And we represented the architect and the engineer. I'm like, they had nothing to do with that.
They had money.
But they, faulty design, we got them out of the lawsuit, but prime example, liability. It could come back to if you're making your own drone. You gotta think about it. You gotta make sure you try to cut your liability off as best you can from a contract standpoint. Insurance, again, indemnification. Once you sell a product, once you use a product, once you buy a product, that's probably gonna all come into place. What indemnification means is this. Typically, it says, if we have a transaction, the language says, either you cover me or I'll cover you, regardless of what happens. And then there starts to be exceptions. Slow down anytime you see an indemnification provision, because you need to read it. You need to read it as dollar signs and put a picture of you right beside it, because it could cost you a lot of money.
Could you get covered with, or get that somehow off your radar screen by some type of a EULA agreement?
What kind of agreement? Sorry.
End user license agreement?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you
Like
could, but
with
you
software.
definitely need, yes, you definitely make sure you try to address it in that, absolutely. But it's still not gonna cut off the people that are aggressive to try to come back to you. You just wanna make sure that you build as much in as you can.
The only way you can prevent yourself from getting sued is not have any money.
Crawl in a hole and then don't play.
Actually, I know some people where that didn't even work.
Yeah. Even-
The American Model Association, which I'm a member, will pay after your homeowners pays,
Mhm.
up to, it's like $1 million. But I'm not sure their fine print has commercial use in it or not.
I bet it doesn't, but I don't know. I haven't read, but I would bet it didn't. Just thinking how the policies are written. But just something that you wanna, think about and consider.
Slightly related subject, we investigated the near space balloons, basically flying balloons over an area, the regulation involving that, and possible liability issues that went wrong with that. Systems that dropped from 10 miles up, and you're flying a small object, 10 miles up is still a pretty good hit.
Yeah.
Does insurance company carry that normally, or do you?
I don't know. That's would you looking under your homeowners?
At the
Or
moment,
your, what?
Yeah, I guess homeowners to start with.
I don't know that, homeowners might, but I don't know. That's such a odd provision, I don't know.
So, a couple of us fly, in this group here, should fly aerial balloons up really high.
Right.
And basically, those are simple, just a balloon lifting, a parachute lifting a device. So nothing should go wrong, but should and does are two different things.
That doesn't matter, that's right.
So,
the current FAA
Wish you hadn't brought that, I'm kidding.
Proposed?
has a
Proposed current.
fine print section that says it does not apply to moored, yes, tide balloons, kites, unmanned rockets, unmanned free balloons, and ultralight vehicles.
Right, there's another section of the FAA rules that apply to this.
If a free balloon has an engine and can so propel, is
It's
that
a
not-
unmanned vehicle.
Okay. It's a dirigible.
What other questions do you have? Because y'all got great questions. Yes, sir.
What's the basic law involving, G, what do you call it, G area, space,
Oh, Class G airspace.
Class G, from the standpoint of a property owner? Does the property owner own the space above their property, up to some certain distance?
That's a great, I don't think so.
If a dirigible, to
Yeah.
build something nice about it, flies over your property, do you have any, recourse, rights? You have rights?
Actually, there was an episode of
about
Planet
a
Money.
dirigible touching or coming close to touching the roof of your house or something?
I don't think so, outside of any other
was a
activity, just
recent-
flying over, I don't think there's a.
Well, there's
call to
FAA law, which the blimp would be under, that says you can't fly below 500 feet near a house
Area restrictions, yeah.
or a structure.
So, there was a.
But hold on, but what
Below 500.
aircraft is that it says, that is?
No,
is that
any
for?
a balloon, a dirigible with a motor
Right.
is an aircraft.
Is that how the FAA is defining it though? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So
I
powered, a
would
powered
be
balloon.
pretty certain that a powered balloon is an aircraft. It fits the
But under-
definition of a aircraft. It flies in the
So
air.
at 501 feet, they can fly over your,
So
I don't
Right,
know.
They're no longer
my real
Class G
question,
airspace.
yeah, my real question
Class
is,
E.
there's all manner of rules about breaking this, someone breaking into your house, someone getting on your property and spray painting it with bleach, or a million and one things. But if they get 5 inches above the dirt, does that go away?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Only if someone says that they didn't like it and reports it.
But it's an FAA, assuming that there's an FAA violation, that's gonna be an FAA, that's not a civil action claim.
The FAA doesn't really
So,
currently.
so that question is actually answered by, there was this Planet Money podcast, a couple of weeks ago, actually it was in May, called Who Owns the Air, it's number 541. It's worth listening to, and it goes into all this crazy law about somebody getting mad because somebody flew an airplane too low, and then the whole question of, do you have any recourse, and how far up do you own, and it's some really crazy arbitrary, like, 82.5 feet or something, because some guy had, whatever it was, it goes back to some story, like they always do,
I mean, it's,
Some
it's,
precedent
it's,
that was set.
Right.
Well, then I don't know of any case law in North Carolina that talks about that part necessarily, because it,
But that would be a federal regulation.
yeah.
there's in, go ahead.
2 questions. One, a project that I've been wanting to do for probably 2 or 3 years now at some point would be to make a blend, a solar powered blend, and have it fly from one end of the country to the other. I'm guessing under current regulations, that would be all sorts of illegal. Is that correct?
Not so long if it's high enough, no problem. You just gotta get it high enough.
Well, if it takes a video,
What's that?
well, if it takes a video.
Well,
Fine, go ahead.
there's a lot of rules that they are going by on the weight and how, the density of it, so that if an airliner hit it, it would just be
Yeah.
destroyed without hurting the airliner.
But if it's
And
like a
whether it's
weather
powered
balloon,
or not.
Under 4 pounds.
I don't know, there's,
Well, that's
Just
for,
like the engine,
free floating balloons, you're talking about basically with,
Power
some
current.
sort of power on it, so that drops it out of the free floating balloon category of the FAA.
if you
The second-
have motors, you know.
Yeah,
It's covered by a
the
different set of rules.
second question is, what would you give the odds of any sort of quadcopter delivery service ever being practical on Amazon?
I mean, you know, this is worth what you're paying for it. I'd say 75, 80%. I would think, I mean, I think it's got some probability to it.
Okay.
I read recently, there's a pizza place in,
Liechtenstein.
Australia?
Australia that is delivering pizzas with the.
There's a cheap way of getting a UAV. You order pizza for your neighbor, let it fly by your neighbor, shoot out the DV gun, collect it and the pizza. You get nothing to do with it.
There's a whole section of law that's gonna be written right around that right there. And
You're seeing it happen, right?
you see it happen, that's right.
Around every crazy law, there's some crazy story that happened.
So according,
Yeah, so what's the
Some
law on shooting
insane
this stuff,
person.
shooting down a
All right.
according to your read of the current proposed law, you don't see anything that would stop such applications from eventually being developed.
I mean, the reason I base that off of is technology, human desire, and commercialism. That's why I think it'll be a high probability. All right, I want to hear from, hold on just, I'm going to ask two people two questions, or the same question. You've been listening to some of this. I'm going to assume you listened to all of it, but let's say some of it, okay? What do you think, how would people use drones? What do you think? If you could just close your eyes and go, man, that would be cool, what would you say?
Well, the other day, my dad was talking about how using drones at like concerts and stuff. So I said, what if they were holding something like a flat screen TV that was not very heavy on the bottom of them, and they all like, you had a bunch of them, and then they came together, so all the screens came together, and they made like a picture above everybody else.
Pretty cool.
Some other formation ideas.
Videos.
That's great.
A sky.
What about you?
Like stunt videos of somebody surfing and then quadcopter taking a video above them.
There's a Kickstarter for that, actually.
Yeah, there's a quadcopter being sold right now that uses the GPS location of the sports enthusiast, and it will follow them, whatever they're doing, at a programmed distance and angle like north, south, east, or west.
I saw a video on that. It's pretty cool.
It's still a great idea.
Yeah, those are good, I mean, those are
Probably be a
great
Nike
ideas.
copter 14.
And the reason I tell you it's important is because y'all got the brain to think, wow, that, why not do that? We might be a little bit tainted on that.
Like a flying personal digital assistant.
Well, yes, sir.
So, back to my security idea. If I had a quadcopter that I wanted to track up my property line, I've got 1.31 acres, okay? That thing is definitely gonna be out of line of sight. But if I developed the technology to keep it within my land, just above the tree line, and I can make it actually send me back a video whenever it goes around to see if there's somebody crossing my property. I mean, I'm not a jerk.
Right.
I'm not really worried about it. But, hypothetically, can I do something like that? It's not gonna be in my line of sight, and it's gonna be completely remote controlled. I could be in the house sleeping when the thing's running.
You're gonna
So
have
it's,
to
so
have
it's
a way.
it's an unmanned vehicle.
Unmanned,
It's not
Automated.
for commercial.
it's not for commercial,
You're not publishing it.
I'm not publishing
It's not for
anything.
publication, that's right. You might wind up publishing something, but you're not doing it for publication.
What if I'm
Right.
building the same thing and I learned a program last week?
Right.
Well, warn me first.
The
I
proposed
think that's where the
FAA would
waiver-
say no,
Yeah.
because you have to be within line of sight at all times,
If it
without
leaves your field of
aids.
view, it has to.
You see, that's why it says, that's why I'm thinking, if it's in line of sight. I mean, there are enough hobbyists who are also professional enough to be able to develop and design these things that aren't gonna screw up. I mean,
But am
yeah,
I-
I mean, you have a really bad wind that might go over the property
Yeah.
line, but that's probably gonna be the worst offense.
Right.
It's not
That's a
gonna
great
happen.
question. I know,
It's not gonna happen without a waiver. Zero chance. Just zero.
waiver from whom?
You're gonna have to apply and get permission,
FAA.
just to say, this is gonna be flying and buzzing over your neighbor's property line within so
No,
many.
it's within
No,
his
no, no,
property line.
within
No,
so
I'm
many
saying
feet.
within mine.
Within yours, how far will it stay away from the neighbor's property line?
I don't know, 12 feet.
You don't know. So it's
No,
gonna be
I mean,
buzzing.
it could get windy, granted.
How good is his code? Has his
Yeah, I was
code been
gonna
error
say,
checked?
you
Is it a
know,
real-time operating
Right.
system?
And what kind of RF interference?
So now you're starting to get into like how the FAA regulates real aircraft and how they regulate experimental
It's
aircraft.
gonna be you'll have to have an experimental waiver, guarantee it.
And that's, the rules around experimental
I tell you,
aircraft
it's a great idea.
aren't that,
Yeah.
they're not
No,
too
they're
bad.
pretty lax, they'll let you risk your
Okay.
life with it, not somebody
So,
else's, but
if
you're
you
not
got-
A fair
sure.
amount about unmanned aircraft.
insurance company.
What if you're doing the exact same stuff, but with a robot that's on the sidewalk? Who regulates that? Is there regulations on that?
Does it leave the
I don't
ground?
Not
think-
flying.
It doesn't fly.
I
I'm
don't
just saying,
think-
you have something taking pictures of everybody running around.
The
on
Google
sidewalk.
car.
The Google
Google
car.
There you go.
Yeah.
Only unmanned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'd still have
There are.
property damage rules.
Well, there's some and there are privacy issues, I
Yes.
think, on the
Are there
photos.
Sounds like a
laws
self-driving
being
car, very
proposed for
small.
that?
Yeah.
If you have a self-driving car, say a small one on the
Let's just take it out
sidewalk.
of the car realm. Let's just say a robot walking the sidewalk.
Well, I
doing the
think that still
photographing.
classifies as a self-driving car.
What about a
Regulation.
person on the sidewalk?
You scare Granny, she falls down and breaks her hip, you'll be sued.
Liability. Let me ask you a question. Has this been helpful?
lawyer happy.
Yes.
Okay. I don't ask a lot of groups to let me come back. Please let me come back. As the FAA is defining and developing, and as North Carolina does this, I would love to come back, because I love your enthusiasm and what you're doing. Your brain is incredible. As a collective group, is wonderful.
Cynicism is free.
No, that's right. Yeah. I'm serious. I mean, this is just fun. I mean, it's like boys and kids and girls with their toys, and it's fun, And this is our hope is we really can be a help for folks trying to get licensed and get approval to get this stuff up in the air and for commercial purposes, and maybe for whatever they're going to do for hobbyists. But we really want to be in the forefront to make sure people can go do this stuff and do it right.
It's crazy how fast it's moving. When I was looking at the legislation, that I believe between 6:25 and 6:30, it went through one reading in one house and
Yeah.
two in the Senate in 5 days.
Yeah, and that's what it
Two
flew.
readings.
2.5 months.
When I saw it, I thought, man, this thing is going.
I mean,
You know?
the thing
And
about the pace of the reading, it just sounds like, it wasn't a reading, that was a skimming at
Yes.
at most.
The Senate read it twice in one day,
Yeah.
had 2 readings passed the same day.
If you ever go watch that, it's sort of like watching sausage getting made.
That's how it
It's
would
not
look.
real pretty, but it works.
Question that kind of relates to this. What is the technical reason beyond a little bit of weight, a little bit of drag, and some inconvenience for having the propellers unshrouded? What's the reason? Is there like some compelling reason why those propellers have to be unshrouded?
We don't
Wait,
like the physics of ducted fans.
Actually, if they were well shrouded, you would get more
Solid.
propulsion, but the weight
Ducted fans work way
would
better.
probably be more advanced.
So you mean that there's something in here that says the propellers have to?
No.
No, no.
This has nothing to do with that.
This is talking about if I'm designing a
I'm
quadcopter.
asking why
They make some
these
with
things
a
are
ring
allowed to
around
fly
the
around the
propellers for safety.
So some of them do have guards.
They
Yes,
look really
yes.
cool.
The problem is, those are usually for kids
Right.
and
Right.
inside of
They know better.
houses,
Yeah.
and they don't have,
Well,
for this, the idea is, the main purpose is to carry that camera. so they won't,
You shave
this
every
thing is
gram.
so light that you have a hard landing and you break the landing gear and you break this.
So it's weight.
It
It's
shaves
weight.
every gram.
They don't put the shroud.
Right. I will sit here and predict that in a short period of time, they will have shrouds.
Because the shroud takes either runtime or payload capacity.
I mean, that thing's only good, they say it only flies 6 minutes.
Really?
Right. Right.
As soon as somebody loses an eye, they'll all have shrill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I
that's-
hope this
that's-
is helpful to you guys. Thank you for letting me come and hang out with you.
I have one
Yes,
relevant
sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
This is the rules